We all know that the opening is most important, the most important part of the game. That's where you plan your middle game. That's where you build the game according to your style and position you would like to play. And that's why we dedicate so much attention and so much time to studying opening. Well, anyway, that's the right thing to do, and if you don't, you should reconsider your way to improve. Now, a lot of people love certain openings, and some openings they don't just like to play, they like it so much that they want to play it with reverse colors, which means if they like opening for white very much, they are willing to play the same opening, well, I mean with the tempo down, but for black. What I mean is, if you like to play Sicilian for white, you may wanna try with c4 and inviting e5 and Sicilian kind of positions, which is English now. Or if you like, for example, Caro-Can for black, well, you are gonna start d4 and maybe on d5 go c3 and this type of positions. Well, against the Slav defense, if you like to play d4, d5, c4, c6, you may like to do the same thing for white with extra tempo. But no, it's not always the right thing to do. For example, openings you like for white, such as King's Indian attack. King's Indian attack, when you play knight f3, g3, d3, castle, and try to play e4 later and start like a King's Indian, like black plays, but to play for white. Now, the reason why I wouldn't recommend you to play this, because, let me explain, knight f3, for white you can play almost any opening and you will get at least equal position. But if you are trying to get an advantage, that's not the way to get an advantage. For example, knight f3, knight f6. If you go g3 and black goes d5 and bishop g2, now if black goes here c5, knight c6, and then e5 like a regular King's Indian, that is okay. Maybe then you can play regular King's Indian with extra tempo. As we're gonna see in one game, it worked for white. But the best way to play against knight f3, knight f6, g3, when you know that white wants to put King's Indian structure. The reason I don't recommend it for white, because black would go d5, bishop g2, c6, d3, bishop f5. Now, why I'm saying this, it's not that something you have to remember where to put bishop, when to go e6. No. When there is a rule that you always have to obey, that rule works on both sides. Something white would like to do and something black should not allow. If white plays King's Indian attack or King's Indian structure, whatever opening white plays that black would normally play, black should try to keep position closed, the lesser contact. And there is a simple explanation for that, because if white plays some opening they would play for black, now they would have an extra tempo, and the best way to take advantage of extra tempo is play the opening position. That's why black should play e6, bishop g6, bishop e7, and slowly develop. So that will give them equality. Now let's look. I want to show you, I want to just prove my point, showing you the game that was played actually many years ago between Grandmaster Yefim Geller, one famous Grandmaster. That game was played in 1955, more than 50 years ago. He played against very famous at that time international master. It was almost Grandmaster strength, Mikenas. Knight f3, d5, c4, d4. Now you see how quickly it's going to turn into King's Indian. g3, c5, bishop g2, knight c6, castle, e5, d3, bishop e7. Now let's see, what do we have here? We have typical King's Indian position, exactly if white pieces were black. So we have, but white plays the King's Indian defense, so they have an extra tempo. And when you have an extra tempo, what you have to try to do is to opening position. b4, obviously on knight takes b4 there is knight takes e5, so c takes b was played. a3, b takes a was played, and now queen a4. Now we got some kind of variety of Benko gambit, which is very sensible opening. Well, but white plays it. White plays this gambit. So on top of everything, there is a pawn on e5. On top of everything, white has an extra tempo. So white has an extra tempo in the sharp opening. That is a big advantage. Bishop d7, bishop takes a3, knight f6, queen b5, and black in this position simply castled. Now in this position I have to point that black already has significant problems. On queen c7, bishop takes e7 will be very dangerous, and if knight takes e7, queen takes e5. So black chose to castle. Now knight takes e5, knight takes c5, queen takes e5, bishop takes a3, rook takes a3, and bishop c6. This is already bad position for black. They have bad pawn structure, weak pawn on d4, and white took on c6, pawn takes c6, and rook e1, queen b6. And in this position, after knight d2, queen b4, and queen a5, black has absolutely terrible pawn structure. Weaknesses on d4, c6, and a7. After queen a5, queen d6 was played, and then rook b3, rook fe8, rook b7, and black is practically lost. Game was over in a very few moves. Rook e5 was played, queen c7. White has tremendous advantage. So white had an extra tempo and used it to attack black's weaknesses in this game, and once they attacked the black weaknesses, that they got much more favorable pawn structure. That's why. So the rule says if you play for black the openings, you play for white. You know, if white, actually it's very interesting rule. If white plays opening that black would normally play with extra tempo, that means black plays, another way of looking at it, that black plays opening that white would normally play. They pawn down, they tempo down. That's why they should try to keep position as close as possible. Now I want to show you one game. This was my game, and actually it's extremely instructive. I played in Olympiad, in Chess Olympiad for United States team for a board one in 1984 in Greece, and I played at that time with the very famous grandmaster Ljubomir Ljubojevic, and he, as we know, was very aggressive, and I started knight f3, c5, g3, d5, bishop g2, knight c6. Okay, here I played Grunfeld defense for white by playing d4. Now when you play Grunfeld defense, and I play Grunfeld defense, which is normally sharp opening, and I have an extra tempo, the black here supposed to pick variation of Grunfeld that gives some kind of a close type of position. They absolutely cannot afford to play sharp variations, and that's what Ljubojevic played. Knight f6, castle, and correct continuation would have been e6 and play it to develop quick. Instead, black played bishop f5. They tried to put their pieces very active. But now I played c4, and you see we started immediate confrontation in its center where black is not sufficiently developed. c4, and here black's supposed to go e6, but they played d takes c. Now neglecting development, queen a4, knight to d7. That's very ambitious. That's a violating main principles of the game. They are tempo down because they play black, and they're going back with the pieces and totally leaving their king size undeveloped. After knight d7, I would say position all after d takes c, and e6 was played, queen takes c4, bishop takes c5, and I played here knight c3. Okay, here we got the position. Black must, absolutely must castle here, after which I would have played rook d1, and I have very active position. I have some advantage. I go bishop f4 and maybe e4, so white has an initiative. Instead, black was very ambitious in this position. They went rook c8. I don't know, maybe he wants to play some kind of knight before and take advantage of my queen's position, but that's in expense of castling. That's a bad move. Rook c8, rook d1, and knight b4. After this move, black has very bad position. Well, but here black already cannot castle because rook takes d7, and you see later bishop on c5 is hanging, so they have to do something, and black was just consistent what they want to do. Black wants to go knight c2 or bishop takes f2, and the queen is unfree. But next white's move totally refuted black's idea. Bishop e3, and black has significant problems. White is threatening to take the bishop, and then knight will be hanging. So bishop takes e3 is bad because queen takes b4, and bishop is hanging, pawn is hanging, knight e5 move is threatening, and black is in a lot of trouble. So next black's move is practically forced, bishop e7 and queen f4. Well, now black would like to castle, but it may be too late. On castling, we can go knight e5, and black has serious problems, so knight c2 was played, knight e5, knight takes rook, and rook takes d7. As you can see, black never had a chance to castle, and now white has overwhelming advantage in development, and black's king cannot castle. Position is totally lost here. Queen a5, rook takes b7, simply threatening maybe bishop c6 check, maybe knight c6, and black cannot castle because e7 bishop is hanging. Queen a6, rook takes a7, queen d6 was played, queen a4 check, and after king f8, bishop f4, black is absolutely unconditionally lost. The king did not castle, rook on h8 terribly placed, knight on a1 incarcerated here, and knight g6 is threatening, rook d7 is threatening, knight d7 check is threatening, a bunch of threats, and with equal material. So black simply resigned in this very position.